Good evening, welcome to the Spice Route. Today we'll be carrying on from where we left off last week on the classical period of paganism. This lesson will be more in the form of questions asked and the responses to those questions. So let's begin. I'll start with two questions regarding Christianity as a religion that is heavily influenced by paganism. First question, why should a person be a Muslim rather than a Christian? After we told the following to a Christian friend of ours, by Allah's will, he became a Muslim. This is what we said. Can your conscience accept that God's most beloved being suffered on the cross? No. Well, is there a possibility that God does not see himself as God? No. Well, Jesus climbs a hill and meets with the devil. He only recognizes that he's the devil later on. This is written in the Bible. He climbs the hill and the devil asks him a series of questions. At the very end, Jesus says, "Now I know who you are. You are the devil." He didn't know until that moment. And when we discussed this with the head priest of the Catholic Church, he said the following, and I will give his answer. From the perspective of Christian theology, the answer is this. At times, he displays human characteristics rather than divine characteristics. So in this case, when does Jesus decide to act as a human being? And how does he decide? If Jesus is God, when he decides to be human, who says, "Go ahead, now you are God," for him to decide to be God again? The decision, in a theological sense, requires not knowledge, but revelation. If the revelation is from himself, this is not possible. If the revelation is from another, then there is no Trinity here. The doctrine of the Trinity collapses. In other words, that verse shatters the Trinity. In this case, it is very clear that Jesus was not crucified, just as Christianity hasn't been able to give Jesus and the Virgin Mary the importance that Christians give them. Christianity has attributed an unrightful position to Jesus and our Mother Mary with what they took from paganism. Think about it, a religion that accepted Jesus as the Son of God much later, 130 years after his death. Another element. Let's say we understand the idea of him being the Son of the Creator. The Holy Spirit mechanism has pagan origins. So, of this Trinity, one of these three is God, one is Jesus, and one is the pagans. Because we ask Christians today about this thing they call the Holy Spirit. We say, what is the Holy Spirit? It is everything that surrounds us, they say. It is a tree, they say. Well, that is paganism. It is deeply rooted in paganism. Today, many Christian theologians acknowledge that they have taken things from paganism and that their religion has been changed. A Christian also shouldn't accept this. I mean, why should someone add a non-religious ritual to my religion? The other question is, why couldn't the nature of Jesus be both God and man? If he is God, you cannot crucify him. If he is God, he must be able to recognize the devil. If he is God, God has failed. Now, I cannot say that Jesus has failed because it is God who appointed him. I said that he wanted it this way. He is testing humanity, so my reasoning makes sense. But if I call Jesus God, then God failed. Both no one believed in him and he was crucified. So did God fail, or which God chose God's failure? If this is a choice, why does the God who made the choice object to it? In the Bible, Jesus objects, saying it cannot be. And how strange it is that even today there is nothing in the Bible about the divinity of Jesus. Nothing comes out. The doctrine of the Trinity doesn't come out either. All of this is in St. Paul, not in Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. The Trinity belief is also paganism, because the Holy Spirit comes from paganism. Look, write what is the Holy Spirit on the internet. No priest was able to explain it to us properly. We explained it to them. What is it? Well, here's a definition from the internet. It is God making his presence felt in man. So, is a feeling now God? Do you know what this is? For example, asking the polytheists of Mecca, "This is of no benefit to you. How can you worship this?" "Don't interfere with my feelings," he says. "I feel this. I feel my creator from this idol," he says. Because the polytheist of Mecca also believes that there was a creator, but that idols were his servants. There is a different kind of paganism here too. So look, they removed those idols there and replaced them with the Holy Spirit. And there was only one idol. Now it's covered the whole church. The Virgin Mary became an idol. The crucifixion of Jesus became an idol. Look, I am saying something very clear. If, Allah forbid, they killed your father, look at the pain. Allah forbid, they martyred your father before your eyes. How many Muslims have lived through this? Many fathers have seen their own children get slaughtered in front of their eyes. So, they killed your father, but at the very moment of his death, someone filmed it, and they gave it to you on a USB stick. And you plug this into a television in your living room, and this plays 24 hours a day. Is there anyone who can bear this? No. Well, I love Jesus because he is an Islamic prophet. We go to the church to study, research, and talk. Even though we know that the image of the Jesus on the cross is fake, we feel strange and we turn our heads away. Our hearts can't bear it. But paganism has made a film of it for you, turned it into an idol, has hung it on the wall, and you watch Jesus bleeding in the church. Isn't he very precious for you? Isn't he your life? If this really happened, would a person reveal it? What are we going to remember? What will we give in return? What will we receive? What will we do? Oh, paganism. Do you know why? Because the pagans would leave the blood of their sacrificed victims there for a long time. Moving on, another question. Since painting is two-dimensional, does it fall into the same category as idols and sculptures? Now, in the Islamic world, sculpture is forbidden the moment it takes human form. Pictures, however, in the sense of photography, are not forbidden, because a photograph has no depth and no particular issue. There is also another issue, which is a strange subtlety. Sculptures attract jinn and devils. They have this feature. For example, the devil really likes to be inside a sculpture. He is a very ugly creature, but being inside a beautiful sculpture makes him very happy, and anyone who comes near it can be harmed by this. It's a very long story. That's why figurative sculptures are forbidden in Islam. But if you're describing a battle or something like that, that's different. But the concept of a sculpture on its own is very harmful to people. It's a very troublesome thing, and that's why it's forbidden. Having figurines in homes has also been seen to cause a lot of harm. There is always trouble in a home with figurines. In the 1980s, there was a period when angel figurines were very popular. Everyone had them in their homes, and each one was an idol. Leaving aside the idols, this was also evidence of their belief in that angels are female. Even Charlie's Angels, for example, a movie, they were also 3 girls there. Angels are one of the greatest symbols of paganism. Those who accepted the angel as female were the pagans. This was then, of course, turned around and brought into Christianity. Let's continue. What are the pagan customs that have been passed down to Muslim communities? What should we avoid? Now, when we discuss what we should avoid, I'm afraid you might say, oh, is this paganism too? When we talk about the root of some nice customs that we have. But to give an example, we adopted the practice of cooking for 7 days after someone's death, after the conquest of Istanbul. The 7th and 40th day commemorations observed after a person's death does not exist in our culture, nor does it exist in Islam. What is there in Islam? After a person dies, there is condolence for 7 days, 10 days, 20 days, however many days the condolence period lasts. It existed during the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ too. Going to that house, eating food, offering condolences to that house, and so forth. But this was not limited to days. If it's a large family, it can last 15 days. People could be coming and going. If the family is a small family, it can end in 3 days. But we came to Istanbul and we saw that Christians had learned from the pagans. The difficult days of a deceased person in the other world are 7 days. They made up 40 from somewhere else, and that became 40. Then they came up with 52. That one didn't even exist in the past. In fact, we asked, what is this 52? They said, the day the nose falls is the 52nd day. Anyway, doing this isn't bad. Not just on the 7th day, but I wish we would engage with the dhikr of Allah every day. That's the main thing. If you pay attention, there is still no 7 or 40 in the east of Anatolia. The condolences begin and continue until the day they end. 3, 5, however many days it takes. In the West, or in the Asian region, in Istanbul, in high society, the 7th day, the 40th day are here, because this is a legacy we've inherited from Rome. In Islam, condolences can last 40 days as well. The man may be the head of a state, for example. People would come from other lands for 40 days. The condolences continue and you serve food every day. Therefore, this 7 and 40-day ritual for the deceased is not part of our custom, but serving food is, of course. The next question we have is about Halloween and witches, and if it has any relevance with paganism. Actually, no, not with paganism, but the issue of witches needs to be addressed in the section of Satanism and the Vatican's violence against women. For years, the Vatican killed women, claiming that the devil had entered them and turned them into witches. Later, the celebration of Halloween emerged as a stance against the Vatican. The Satanists created this. Halloween is a Satanist ritual. Why? For years, you killed women, saying the devil had possessed them, and you called them witches. And so the Satanists turned around and took their revenge. Today, all of America and all of Europe celebrate Halloween. So, who is this against? O Vatican, for the souls of the women you killed, so to speak, I am responding to you with Halloween. It is a ceremonial expression of the Satanists' devotion to the devil, a conscious response to a massacre. Moving on, we spoke about pagan rituals in Christianity. I'll talk about lighting candles. This one is quite important. So, you go to a church, you light a candle to make a wish. This is also a pagan ritual, because as long as nature holds fire within it, it means there is hope. The earth warms up, spring comes, and that is when hope blossoms. So when you light that candle, it means, I am the earth, burn me, warm me, give me what is inside me. This is another paganistic concept that has been passed down to us. Paganism is the most fundamental form of this belief. It can take on new forms anywhere. Another question. Is egg painting in Christianity also a pagan ritual? Yes, because let's say it for those who don't know. When the egg is under the hen, whatever color you paint it, the chick will hatch with feathers of that color. This is knowledge that the people in the past knew. It's used for a game, but then it also becomes something else. We can change nature. Let's paint the egg. Maybe things we can't change within ourselves will also change. they say, and they paint the egg with this idea. What is it? For example, I have a naughty child. I'll paint this egg so he becomes a good child. So he becomes a good chick, basically. Let's continue. Question. Is the area where the Stonehenge stones are located in England a place of worship for pagans? Although it is said to be valuable to pagans today, it was a place of worship in the past. If a pagan ritual is to be performed somewhere, we must find symbols related to the culture in which those pagans lived. So, what kind of symbols? We need to see a flower figure. We need to see a cross. So, there must be a symbol. There must be a hammer. There must be a mounting, for example. So, the pagans there should be able to say, this is a pagan structure. We pagans who live here value daisies, so we put a daisy figure here. But there are no figures on those stones. Stonehenge was a place of worship, but it wasn't a center of paganism. It was a center of worship of Islam. Let's move on. Question. Is there a connection between shamans and pagans? No. Shamanism is a corrupted form of belief. It is the culturally corrupted form of the religion left behind by an Islamic prophet. Otherwise, shamanism is not pagan. Paganism, on the other hand, has never accepted Islam. They are complete disbelievers. Their essence is corrupted. The man is already an infidel. They have not corrupted a revelation sent down to them. Whatever was offered to them, they put something else in its place. It's quite different. Question. Is there an influence of paganism on world-famous people? Yes, these days Satanism is actually much more prevalent than paganism, especially in the world of music and art. You can see this in Madonna, for example. But it is also known that Satanists use many pagan elements, because paganism is exactly the system the devil wants. So Allah Almighty says to you, bow down to Adam. Not only do they refuse to bow down, they say, I am more valuable than him. I am made of fire, he is made of clay. And that is paganism. So who is the master of the pagans? The devil. What other ritual is born from the devil? Satanism. Therefore, the relationship between Satanism and paganism can be seen more clearly when Satanism is explained. But today, with the Illuminati being very popular in the art world, there are those who try to portray paganistic figures as Illuminati. Or there are also those who use it, saying, put an eye on top of the pyramid and let them call you Illuminati, you'll gain a lot of viewers, and so forth. Next question. What are your thoughts on wedding rings? Actually, wedding rings are a Christian custom. Let me explain it like this. This can be an indication to jewelry makers. The first person to wear a diamond was the pharaoh. Wearing diamonds does not lead to blasphemy, don't get me wrong, but there are many stories here and we could talk about it until the morning. Paganism, symbols, tools, objects, and so on. The pharaoh would give diamonds to the woman he loved. Why? Because whoever put a diamond on a woman, this would make it harder for the woman to betray him. This is a hidden knowledge. From the pharaoh to the present day, the diamond ring has remained. Why do you give a girl a diamond ring? So that she won't cheat on you. Terminologically speaking, why do people wear wedding rings? What do young people today know about why we wear wedding rings? So that when you go somewhere, they know that you're married, that you're not single, and so they don't hit on you in plain terms. Now, this is the actual origin of wearing diamonds. There's a hidden secret to it. The interest and affection towards the person wearing it increases, and that person doesn't want to cheat on them. Their loyalty increases. In this sense, the wedding ring is generally a culture that originated with the pharaohs in Egypt and migrated from there to Europe. It is a culture that we later accepted from Europe to the Middle East, because with us, we don't even think about cheating. In Europe, cheating on the one you love is a necessity. It fulfills a need. For us, it is betrayal. We'll continue. What's the relationship between Greek mythology and paganism? Now, when we look at Greek mythology very clearly from the perspective of religious history, in which, inshallah, there will be an episode on this in the life of the Prophet Muhammad called The War of the Gods, and there we will see that believers incorporated mythological concepts throughout history when establishing their ritual structures. These mythological concepts are not only found in Greek philosophy, as is commonly believed, they are also found in the Mayans, in South American beliefs, in Buddhism, in Zen philosophy, and in many others. There are periods when angels, awliya, and prophets transcended the line of divinity. However, Greek mythology remained at the top here because of the more established writing culture in our geography, the better transmission of figures to the present day, and better marketing. The Greeks operate with a dominant Hellenistic culture in this sense in Europe, but my first point I'm saying is this. Mythological structures always existed in cultures other than Greek mythology. But because Europe developed the most influential scholarship in the world, this is at the forefront. When we come to the essence of Greek mythology, especially as we see the supremacy of the gods in directing people's beliefs, this time they began to use mythology to say in which, what was the greatest thing about Greek mythology in Rome and Byzantium? The gods want it this way. The gods want it this way, and the strange thing was that in Greek mythology, each god also had a representative on earth. The Greeks won't talk about this. If we were to discuss Greek mythology in a program, we would come to this. Who is there among the Greek gods and goddesses? There's Zeus, for example. Zeus also had a counterpart in the world. They would gather in a council, make decisions about their countries, their lives, and agriculture and so on, and then tell the Greek people, the Hellenistic people, the gods wanted it this way. This is the hidden side of the story. So they used this in politics. What is the evidence for this? The evidence is this. Most priests say Rome did not accept Christianity because it loved it so much. It converted to Christianity with the belief that it could form a very serious political power. In doing so, it did not abandon its old habits and Hellenistic concepts. So the figure of Jibril alayhi salam in the church today comes from Greek mythology. Michael alayhi salam comes from Greek mythology. But when the Greeks transferred this to this side, they did so to create turmoil among their people after a while. And in response to this, philosophy was born. The gods want this, but it doesn't suit our minds. At this point, this episode in the life of the Prophet Muhammad that I previously mentioned is a serious process in the history of religions and Greek mythology, because the period when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came was the most difficult period in the world. There was paganism, mythology, oppression of people, oppression of women, money problems, agricultural problems, states. No other prophet came during such a chaotic period in the world, neither in terms of belief, nor sociology, nor in any other sense. Therefore, during the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, we must explain that it wasn't only the Arabian Peninsula that it was in such chaos, but the entire world, so that we can see how we have transformed from where we were to where we are now through the influence of the light that came into the middle of that chaos, or understand how we must cling to the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in order to avoid returning to the same chaos today. We will try to explain that. Moving on, does the prominence of fire among the Majusi also stem from pagan rituals? We need to consider the Medusi alongside the Zoroastrians, which is another topic of the spice route, but due to the influence of the jinn were the ones who most negatively affected paganism and fueled them, because the jinn, before our prophet's time, entered matter and spoke through that matter. Trees spoke, stones spoke, things spoke. When you come to the Medusis, when the jinn around this fire were seen, the great divinity in the fire was noticed because the devil made the jinn worship the fire for a time. He himself possesses this characteristic. The corrupted jinn worshipped the fire. People saw those jinn and they also began to worship the fire. Humans do not worship what they fear, nor do they worship what benefits them. Sometimes they say, for example, lightning struck. That lightning split the tree, so they called it the lightning god and worshipped the lightning god. Humans flee from what they fear. They do not worship it. They do not respect it. They do not love it, and they do not ask anything from it. You deify the things you love, then you start fighting with the things you have deified. Then you either become equal to it or superior to it. The process never changes. Question. It is said that pyramid structures are beneficial to human energy in psychology. Could you provide some information about pyramid houses? Now, they have a very high energy. I wish all our houses had pyramid roofs. Let me elaborate. Now, in terms of energy collection, it is a long geometric issue, but a substance decomposes more slowly under a pyramid. This is because the energy function created by that geometry and its ability to collect electromagnetic waves focus all the electromagnetic waves you don't see in the environment at one point, minimizing the impact of environmental factors on us, allowing our cells to remain alive for longer. That is why they wondered whether lifespan would be extended under a pyramid. Of course, the first pyramids were spatial structures, and we will mention people's efforts to copy them on the journey of the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Therefore, pyramids have this added feature. An apple can stay fresh longer under a pyramid, and people can understand each other better and speak more comfortably under a pyramid. Their perception increases. Its effect is significant. In fact, there is even a benefit to placing a pyramid in the house we live in. This helps our bodies suffer less damage by collecting all the magnetic fields generated by our mobile phones and computers at the very least. It collects them. You can make this pyramid yourself out of stone or even cardboard. Just make sure it's a pyramid with a square base. Place it in a corner of the room. They even sell such pyramids made of salt or crystal-like materials in markets now. Question. Does the belief that throwing pomegranates on the ground on the night of 21 December bring good fortune originate from paganism? Yes, that is paganistic. Is sticking a candle in a cake and blowing it out also a pagan belief? If there is a candle, it's paganism, because that is also making a wish. Question. What does the pentagram on the thumbnail image represent for pagans? This is actually a structure used in satanic rituals. It is shared with the pagans. The satanic symbol used in this ritual is an ancient ritual from the devil. You put human blood on its corners, and after a certain ritual, you encounter a great jinn, and you establish a relationship with this jinn. Sometimes marriages can also result from this. Other filthy things happen too. They would demand new sacrifices from you. It's a horrid ceremony that continues like this. And with that, we've come to the end of the questions. Thank you for listening. Next week, inshallah, we'll talk about the modern period of paganism. We hope to see you next week. Take care.